Hi, everybody. It's Yvette Herrell. I am so grateful for you taking the time to join us this evening. I hope this is the first of many town halls that we can have over the phone. But what I really wanted to do this evening was just give you an update of my first 100 days in office and all the great things I think we've done. I've been so honored to be in Washington, D.C. and be the voice of New Mexico's second. And of course, this wouldn't happen without our amazing staff, both in Washington and in D.C. And in New Mexico. We were able to hire just some great people that were very familiar with the district and really the issues that have been at the forefront for New Mexico and the nation. But with that said, I just kind of want to give you an overview of what we've done over the last 100 days. I know this is just past the 100-day mark, but trying to organize our schedules was a little difficult. But I've been really honored again to just be here. I've actually introduced four, I think, very good pieces of legislation. One, the PAUSE Act, which I'm sure some of you have already heard about. This maintains a critical border health protections. It was used by the Trump administration, but it was a very powerful tool for our Border Patrol agents. With this Title 42, which is the PAUSE Act, they were actually able to expel those that were coming into our country illegally through Mexico or Canada, and they could do the processing right on the border. So it took just a couple of hours. And being that New Mexico has been locked down for a year, now we're just seeing some recovery efforts with kids going back to school, with businesses starting to open. We feel this is very important to keep this Title 42 in place, not only for the protection of Border Patrol, but for our border communities, our seniors, our first responders, basically everybody in the state that's been affected by COVID. We've also introduced the POWER Act, and this one had support from our leadership with Kevin McCarthy, Steve Scalise, Bruce Westerman, and approximately 30 other members. And it basically is a bill that would prevent future presidents from banning moratoriums or from preventing a moratorium on energy production leases on federal lands without the approval of Congress. And I'm sure most of you know how vital the energy industry is, not just for New Mexico, but for the nation. This is something that's very critical to New Mexico. As you know, over 50% of our oil is produced off federal land and over 60% of our natural gas. So this is something that we wanted to do, Bill, we wanted to put in place so that we could add some protections for the industry that supplies so much money to not only our state budget, but infrastructure, roads, classrooms. We also introduced the Protecting New Mexico's Jobs and Public Education System Act. And basically what this was it was a request to actually exempt New Mexico from some of the executive orders, specifically the ban on oil and gas leasing. And then finally, the fourth bill that I've introduced is called Defending Our Defenders Act. And right now it's on a federal officer, if he's killed in the line of duty, it is punishable by capital punishment. And what this does is it expands it so it makes the death penalty an option for state and local municipalities to use if there is an officer from the state or local level killed in the line of duty. I'm just so excited about our office, and I can't have this call without bragging about some of the things we've done here. We've actually have an amazing woman named Donna Sear, who is our constituent services person as it relates to casework. She's already resolved over 71 constituent issues, and in fact, as of today, it's over 100, but as the 100-day mark, it was 71. Through this last 100 days, we've been able to get back to New Mexico several times. We've traveled through every single county in the district and had remarkable meetings with the Chamber of Commerce's, with business leaders, with constituents, different industries. And so I'm very grateful to have been able to get through the entire district in its first 100 days. And I'm sure most of you know, we've opened 2 offices in New Mexico, one in Las Cruces, the other is in Roswell. And we've actually started now with our mobile office hours. So I know that we have had Brandon from our office up in Silver City. I know that Joe Martinez, who works with our veterans groups, has been in Ruidoso, has been up to Isleta and other places around the district. And what we've really, I think, tried to do, and we've done a very good job of keeping the district engaged on what's happening on the federal level, and keeping the constituent services very, very robust, and making sure that we're communicating with everybody. Just in the last 30, 45 days, we really did something special for New Mexico, and we brought 2 different trips, 2 different groups of members of Congress down to New Mexico. We brought a group of 3 down to Artesia and Roswell. We went out and visited some of the oil patch. We went out to a rig owned by EOG, watched them plug a well so we could have an opportunity to visit with the workers on the ground, the business owners, had a roundtable with various stakeholders, elected officials, and people throughout the area of the oil patch. And then we actually brought another group of 8 down to the border. We visited the processing center. Then I took them over to, obviously, Santa Teresa, to the port of entry. But I think really the highlight for this trip was a trip down to Columbus, New Mexico, and out to the Johnson Ranch, so that members of Congress could understand New Mexico's reality, so they could see what this looks like for our border communities, the gaps in the border wall, and how we can work together to address this issue. So it's been an incredible 100 days in office. We've actually responded to over 8,000 constituent letters, and as of tonight, it's closer to 10,000. And then I just want to highlight our advisory committees. And while I'm kind of giving you the overview, if any of you have any questions, please dial *3, because I want to kind of get through this and then make sure that I'm answering any questions that you might have for us. But back to the advisory committees, we set this up so that we would have even more reach into the district in terms of communicating with, again, industries, with chambers, with business leaders. And so we have advisory committees for the ag industry. We have a veterans advisory committee. We have a small business development advisory committee. And then we have a rural communities advisory committee, as well as an energy advisory committee. And I know this is probably a lot of information to take in, but I'm just very excited about what we've been able to do in a short amount of time. And it's been a little different here by virtue of the COVID. We are still having most of our meetings, the committee meetings are virtual. So there's very few people that are actually in the Capitol at the meetings. A lot of them are done strictly online. Some of them are done in a hybrid fashion. Right now, there are still several members of Congress that are voting by proxy that are not in the Capitol all the time. So we're starting to meet more and more of our colleagues across the aisle, and even some in the Republican caucus, as we start to see more and more people coming into the Capitol. And hopefully very soon, some of these mandates will be released or eased a little bit, so that we can start doing the work of the people in person, and the Capitol will get opened back up. Right now, it's still closed to the public, so we have not been able to have any visitors into our office or into the Capitol. But again, I think that's going to change, I hope soon. I know there's been several people who've wanted to come up to Washington, D.C. and visit not only the capital city, but also our office, and hopefully we'll see that change very soon. But again, it's been such a great honor to be here, and I just couldn't have been able to do all the things we've accomplished in this first 100 days without, again, just an incredible amount of work done by the staff. They've just been so much help and such a blessing for me and for the district. And with that, if there's questions that I can answer, I'm so happy to do that right now. And I'm just, again, grateful for your time this evening to kind of hear what we've done in our office and for New Mexico.
Great. Good evening, Congresswoman. We'll have our first question from Susan in Silver City in just a minute, but just a reminder for everyone on the call, if you have a question, please press *3. All right, we'll go to Susan in Silver City with a question about Medicare. Susan, your line is live.
Yes, hello, Congresswoman. I wanted to ask about how do I submit a request to your office for assistance on Medicare?
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's a great question, and thank you for joining the call this evening, Susan. The best way really to reach Donna, who works in our constituent services and does our casework, is to go to the website, and that's at Herrell, HERRELL.house.gov. And on that website, there is a field that says Help with Federal Agencies. If you will click on that and send an email, it will go directly to Donna. And in some cases, she'll have to have paperwork signed, get different amounts of information depending on what the issue is. So it's usually more streamlined if you can go directly to the website and then submit under that tab that says Help with Federal Agencies, and then Donna obviously will reach right out to you and get the ball rolling that way. And there's actually on the website, you're able to sign up for newsletters. You can ask other questions, but specific for those types of constituent services when it's regarding a federal agency, a VA issue, or Medicaid, Medicare, that will go directly to Donna, and she will be happy to help you.
Great, thank you, Congresswoman. We'll go, again, a reminder, if you have a question, press *3. If you want to leave your email address for the Congresswoman to sign up for her newsletter and email updates, please press *6. Again, *3 for questions, *6 to leave your email. Our next question will be from a gentleman from Alamogordo. Your line is live, Louis.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. This is Louis Terrio from Alamogordo, Miss Yvette. I want to thank you for the good job you're doing. And I'm on the Veterans Leadership Council here in Alamogordo for Lincoln and Otero County. And Mr. Joe Martinez has made our meetings. We're getting kind of thin because most of the veterans organizations are closed down. But we want to thank you for the job you're doing for us, lady.
Oh, you're welcome, and I'm glad you brought that up. So Joe Martinez, he's just really a rock star. He is handling our veterans services in the Las Cruces office, but travels around the district and meets with our veterans groups all over. And in fact, he and I were able to go to Ruidoso the last time I was in district about 10 days ago or so, and met with some of the veterans up in Ruidoso. So thank you for that. We are certainly making sure that we have our finger on the pulse and kind of bringing everybody back together so that there's someone to contact. I mean, most people have direct access to me. I didn't change my phone number or my email address when I got to Washington, and I'm grateful for Joe's hard work to make sure he's connecting with the veterans. So thank you for that.
Great. Just a reminder, again, *3 for questions, *6 if you want to leave your email address. Our next question will come from Kathy. Kathy, your line is live.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. My question is, I wanted to know about the children that are incarcerated at the border, the thousands of children without parents. Did they get sent back, or are they being taken care of?
Actually, it's a great question. I've actually been down to the border twice. I went once with Leader McCarthy when he brought a group down, and our our intent for that visit was to go to the new processing center that opened in El Paso, which that is where they are housing the unaccompanied children and the families that are coming into the country. And again, I went back down there just 2 weeks ago with the group that we brought. There are so many unaccompanied children coming in, but I will tell you the facility in El Paso is outstanding. It is brand new. It only opened in 2019. It has a capacity for 1,040 people. Right now, they're only able to keep the children, the unaccompanied minors, in that facility for up to 72 hours. So when we were there the first time, when I was with Leader McCarthy, the day we were there, they actually met their capacity. They had over 1,040 people. When we went back just 2 weeks ago, it was a lot less children there and very few families. And they are moving the children out. You've seen on the news, I'm sure, that some of them are getting sent to hotels. I know that some have been sent to Fort Bliss, and that falls under the purview of the Department of Health. DHS is taking care of the children once they leave the Border Patrol facility there in El Paso, the processing center. But when they get into we weren't allowed to take cameras in or anything, but just so you know, when the children are coming in and the families, they're right away given an opportunity for shower, a new set of clothing, food, and again, they're only held in the facility the Border Patrol manages for up to 72 hours, and then they are being moved to different facilities. And right now, they go through a vetting process. Naturally, they're trying to find the contacts or the sponsors, if you will, that are in the country. But it is a crisis because there are so many unaccompanied minors coming through our border right now, and especially we see more of that in New Mexico, on the New Mexico border, than we do over in the Rio Grande Valley. But to answer your question, the children are being taken care of. They're being outsourced to different parts of the country so that they can be facilitated, because there just is not enough room to keep all of them at the processing center in El Paso.
Thank you. Our next question is also on the border, will be David. David, your line is live.
Hi, Yvette. Thank you for your service to our state. Quickly here, I just worked the numbers for several clients in the advertising agency business here in Las Cruces, and worked the numbers for several clients today because their businesses are suffering severely, especially in the restaurant category. We're yellow, along with Luna County, Otero County, your home county, Hidalgo County, which is really underserved in healthcare services. We're all yellow. We're pretty heavily in the yellow. Bernalillo and Cibola counties, where Rio Rancho and Albuquerque are about to go green. So my question is there something the federal government can do to help us? Because it's obvious if you work the numbers, even if you take the New York Times recent numbers that are tracking our county and comparing it to Santa Fe County and other northern New Mexico counties, the border crisis situation is impacting our ability to recover from COVID. Is there any way you can get us help from the federal government, from funds, to help us get the southern part of the state up to green? Because the governor, she's done a lot of things to help New Mexico, but the southern counties, especially the border counties, are way behind in this recovery. Is there anything you can help us with there?
Yeah, we've actually tried working with the governor on that issue specifically to help, because the problem's just becoming exacerbated because of the number of people coming through. And it also then stems to another outbreak of COVID, which is what we're very concerned about. I wrote a letter to the governor and asked her to place the National Guard back on the New Mexico border, just so that we could have the help there for the Border Patrol. But as it relates to infusing more money into the southern part of the state, the COVID bill got passed. I know there was some relief in there, not as much as I would have liked to have seen, but there were more dollars that were allocated for the individual states so that they could use those. I actually brought up an amendment while we were doing the overview of the bill, and I asked the amendment to look at the big picture, every state in the nation got $1 billion for COVID relief in the very beginning. What I asked for was of the over $1 trillion that was not spent, to take a look at that and let the smaller rural communities and counties have direct access to some of that COVID relief money, so that these counties and communities could start infusing money back into their revenue streams. That amendment it didn't get passed. I could not get enough support on both sides of the aisle to get it through. But that's what's unfortunate, because not one community or county outside of Bernalillo that touches the 2nd Congressional had direct access to any of the COVID relief monies. And I think that was a real mistake, because it's not really a one-size-fits-all. And like you're just saying, different parts of New Mexico are being affected differently, still in the different colors. But like I said, we've worked to do what we can on our end to help. And certainly I keep in touch. Our chief of staffs, just so you know, we actually have meetings. Our chief of staffs, both on the district side and in the Washington side, meet every other week on the phone, so that we can kind of keep tabs of what's happening. I have conference calls with the governor every other week. Lately, it's been more about the vaccine rollouts and so forth, which they've done a very good job of getting access to that. But I don't have just a silver bullet answer for your question. Certainly the economy is something that's been very important to me and to the people of New Mexico. And so I think we've certainly spread the word. We've certainly talked to our colleagues. We've certainly tried to expose some of the challenges that we face especially in the southern part of the state. And we'll just continue to work on that. But David, I wish I had just a black and white answer and something that you could resonate with. But we know it's challenging, but we continue to monitor it. But would love to visit with you offline, a different call, if there's some ideas that you have. I just spoke to the chambers around the district yesterday morning, working on how we can help to develop a better way and a faster way, if you will, to get our economies going around the rural areas of the district. And so we're certainly working with all of them in any capacity that we can. But again, I don't just have a black and white answer for you, but by keeping in touch with everybody and these advisory committees where we're getting good information, one of the biggest hurdles that I think every industry is facing right now is the shortage in workforce. And that's been one of the things that we get probably the most phone calls about, is the inability to hire people and get their product out the door or get their product on the shelves. And that's something that we're working with the local chambers and communities with as well.
All right, thank you. Just a reminder, one more time, if you have a question, please press *3. If you'd like to leave your email address for the Congresswoman's email updates, press *6. Our next question will be from John about the oil and gas moratorium. John, your line is live.
Hey, John, are you there?
Oh, yes. Hello. Should I proceed with the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I wanted to ask what the change in production level has been since the Biden administration made their change in terms of dollars or barrels or whatever units.
For the oil and gas industry right now, the production levels are good. What's happening, though, is it's the uncertainty of what's going to happen with these moratoriums and the inability to have the drilling on federal lands. And you can see the reflection in just gas has gone up $1 in some parts of the country over just the last 120 days or so. And that's absolutely a result of just the uncertainty. And what's happening right now is, while production levels are still decent for New Mexico, it's it's very short term, because we don't know what this moratorium is going to look like as it relates to having access to those federal lands. And I will tell you, we've also sent a letter to the state land commissioner because the way that New Mexico is constructed with private land, public land, federal lands, it's very difficult to have drilling operations on state land and not federal land. You've kind of got to combine the two. But what the concern is right now is losing our energy independence. We've seen where we've had great opportunity to produce more with less emissions in a cleaner environment, and that's due to the science, the technology, the innovation of our industry leaders. The concern is that as the production levels start to go down and we start seeing ourselves looking to Iran, Russia for our oil or for our energy, the pricing is going to change even more dramatically. But as of right now, they are still producing in New Mexico. However, with that being said, and we've met with the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development in Lee County and in Eddy County, they are seeing some of their companies actually leave New Mexico and go across the state line where they can drill easily and with less regulation and less red tape, if you will, because of the federal lands in New Mexico. So these are all things that are going to be real factors as we move forward with this. We also know there's a bill being introduced right now that is going to allocate money to plug several of the orphan wells. But what the bill also will do is raise the bonding rates on some of these businesses, which if you're a large producer, a major producer, it won't hurt you as bad as it will some of these midstream and smaller producers. So right now it's really preparing for the uncertainties and what this will look like for our oil patch in the next number of weeks.
Excellent. Our next question will come from Thomas, a question about feral cattle. Thomas, your line is live.
Good evening. Representative Herrell.
Yes, sir.
We got a problem over here in Grant County. The Forest Service wants to kill 250 feral cattle that's on the forest. And I think there's a problem on jurisdiction. State Livestock Board claims they own all unbranded cattle. Okay, they don't need to go in there and kill those cows. If they're going to dispose of them, fine. Let somebody go in there and shoot them and salvage the meat. But they're still up in the air on what they're going to do up there. And I don't think Forest Service ought to do that. So how are they going to?
Yeah. Well, what's happening with that? I'm very aware of that. In fact, we actually attended via phone one of the Grant County cattle growers meetings. Doug Levine in our office has had several conversations with Fish and Wildlife. Now, the last update I got last week was that there were some meetings taking place between Fish and Wildlife, some of the cattle growers up there, because you're right. There were a lot of people concerned with the idea that they would come in and eliminate these cattle and leave the meat there on the ground. So there were a lot of ideas floated around at the Grant County cattle growers meeting the night that we were on the call. Again, we've had several conversations with the cattle growers there, but also some of the ranchers up there and Fish and Wildlife. And right now, like I said, it looked like they had started finding some solutions without going in there and just shooting all of those cattle. There was some talk about allowing some of the ranchers to go in and take some of them off of that Gila. So we're waiting to kind of find out what's going on. But it is an oxymoron because, like the guys mentioned on the call the other night, they're breaking their own rules to do what they're considering doing in terms of eliminating these cattle. But we're definitely on top of that and working with New Mexico cattle growers, the Grant County cattle growers, and then some of the ranchers over in the Grant County area. And that we'll just kind of have to wait to see what they decide. But we've been engaged with that conversation, and I don't think as of right now they've made a final decision. But when I spoke with Chad Smith from Farm Bureau, who was on our advisory call last Friday with our ag advisory call, it looked like the idea of going in and just shooting them was possibly taken off the table, and they're looking at some other options at this point.
Great. We have another oil and gas question, this time from Jeremy in Artesia. Jeremy, your line is live.
All right, thank you. Ms. Herrell, this is kind of a repetitive question that you kind of answered before, but what does the government plan on doing with this moratorium on the oil and gas industry in southeastern New Mexico, and what do you plan on doing to try to stop them from drilling and laying pipelines across the federal lands?
Yeah, we've been, I don't know if you've been watching the news, but we have actually, not just, when I say we, not just our office, but actually several Republicans and even some Democrats. In fact, our office penned a letter to the Department of Interior just before Deb Haaland was confirmed. So we sent it to the acting secretary. We had 23 co-signers on our letter. 2 of those people were Democrats. Henry Cuellar was one of the Democrats that signed on to the letter, pushing back on the federal government for these executive orders and what they're doing to the ability to have high production with the right-of-ways, water lines, etc. And just know, I was in a meeting today with a group in in Washington, D.C. that's it's all about energy. It's the HEAT group, and what we do is we actually they work closely with the Western Caucus, but this group is very aware of all of the above in terms of energy and pushing back very hard on this administration, what this looks like for energy independence. What we're trying to do is make sure when people are understanding that it's not just about fossil fuels, or it's not just about starting the car. This is about so many byproducts that are made from petroleum products, and how vital the industry is, not only for New Mexico and our revenues and so forth, but for the entire country, and the loss of jobs that may be connected with this. And we saw this executive order, the first one that was signed, that stopped the production at the Keystone XL pipeline. Up to 10,000 jobs were lost. And I will tell you that there has been very, very active pushback on the federal government, on the Biden administration, for these policies that they're pushing. And right now, a lot of the things that we're seeing coming out of committees in Washington are detrimental. I mean, this is really about changing the way we see our energy garnered in our country. And by that, I mean, trying to go without a carbon footprint by the year, 2030 or 2050, eliminates all of the fossil fuels or the mining or the rare earth minerals. And this is just not viable. We can't rely on just all green energy. We can't rely on when the sun shines, when the wind blows. And there has to be an all of the above approach so that we can have good, clean, affordable energy for a number of reasons. But and I know that's kind of a long answer, but just know that Steve Scalise, Kevin McCarthy, all of the folks that sit on the Natural Resources Committee and certainly the Energy Committee are pushing back on these policies. And I think as we continue to have the conversation, I think Americans, New Mexicans understand, but I think Americans in general are starting to understand that, we're seeing it already, a change at the pump. We're already seeing pricing going up at the gas pumps. We're already seeing uncertainty with communities that rely heavily on the industry for their GRT and other revenues. So just know that we are pushing back. I actually had the opportunity to meet with several of the companies that do business in New Mexico over the last several weeks, and collectively there is just a good voice and a good push going forward, but we've got to continue to message and ensure that we're putting the pressure on this administration so they understand how critical and how harmful these policies are.
Thank you. We'll go to Eric with a question about one of your recent border trips in just a minute. But just a reminder for those on the call, if you want to leave your email address with one of our screeners for the Congresswoman's email updates and newsletter, press *6. Our next question here will be from Eric in Alamogordo. Eric, your line is live.
Yeah, hi. I was just curious about what exactly you found, what you were looking for at the Johnston Ranch, and kind of expound on how things are going for those ranchers on the border.
Yeah, it was a really great trip and very eye-opening for the men that went down there with us and the staff that had never been. Some of them had never been to New Mexico, and certainly they had never been to our border. What the biggest issue, what's happening for some of the ranchers down on the southern border there, like the Johnsons, for instance, and I've gone out with Chief Chavez from the El Paso sector before. She and I went out and visited with the Johnsons. But you've got this border fence that's going along, and then they have this 3/4-mile gap in the fence, and what that has done is just created basically a funnel. But the reality of what's happening in our rural communities for our ranchers right there on New Mexico southern border is, and you won't hear about this on the news, but people are not understanding the amount of property damage, the stolen vehicles, the cut fence lines, the broken water lines, the livestock that they've had to treat, because this is very stressful for the livestock when you have that kind of foot traffic coming through. And a lot of these, just so you know, the illegals that are coming through, like on the Johnson Ranch and down in that area, these aren't the families that are coming through like the Rio Grande corridor that are just throwing up their arms and saying, surrendering for asylum. These are people that are actually not wanting to get caught by the Border Patrol agents. So most of them are dressed in camouflage, but they'll go and get to the water, which keeps the livestock off the water during the heat of the day, and especially as the temperatures are warming up. And so that causes a lot of stress for the cattle on the Johnson Ranch and on the neighboring ranches. I think it was really great when we went down to Columbus. We had 9 members of Congress at that round table. We had 9 ranching families from all the way from the Boot Hill all the way up to Columbus, and then some that are north of the I-10. But just to see and hear a different perspective with, again, the stolen property. And what we're working on is a bill that would actually reimburse our ranchers and our farmers down on the border for some of the lost property, the production as it relates to their cattle operations, to their farming operations. And so that, in fact, Kevin McCarthy had us put together some photographs and kind of an update of what we saw on the border. And I don't know if you're following different members of Congress, but Congressman Comer, the ranking member, Congressman Keller, all of them that came down really posted and talked about the border issue in New Mexico. So it really highlighted, a different reality than what you're seeing in other parts of the country. So very effective, very great trip. And I know the ranchers down there appreciated having access to so many members of Congress that were all from the Oversight Committee, who are now, in fact, we've actually sent a letter as a committee to Secretary Mayorkas, asking them and also putting pressure on the administration to finish the border wall, the barrier there, so that it can bring some relief from all the traffic that's coming through the Johnson Ranch and the subsequent ranches next door.
Thank you. Our next question about securing our elections comes from April. April, your line is live.
You were actually voted in, but with all these issues we're talking about, makes me wonder, is our elections in New Mexico secure? I mean, for people who are registered voters and U.S. citizens, I feel like that the majority of people being brought up through this administration is being brought up to salvage or sabotage our voting. And I think a lot of the issues that we have come in contact with is due to the lack of wanting voter ID and I'm doing chores, fingerprinting to assure that the ones that are voting are legal. I mean, you have to show your driver's license and all your other stuff just to get, adopt a dog from a pound or get, say, help with neutering or spaying. And so you go through lots of red tape just to do stuff here, regular stuff what we do here in the U.S. Now on our voting,
right.
If New Mexico isn't secure and making sure that our votes count, people are going to stop voting, and that's going to be a deformation to our country.
Yeah, I agree. And the voting issue, it's concerning. And I don't want people to think their vote doesn't count or it's not important, because right now it's more important than ever. I mean, obviously, elections have consequences, and some of the things that are happening right now to not only New Mexico but the nation are a direct result of that. There is a lot of uncertainty. I will be honest with you and tell you that H.R. 1, the bill that this was a bill that Nancy Pelosi pushed for, and one of the first ones that got through in this Congress, and it's still in the Senate. It hasn't passed the Senate, and it does absolutely change the way our elections will take place. It nationalizes voter harvesting. It takes away all voter ID. It allows 16-year-olds to vote. I mean, it is a horrible bill. I know that I'm a part of the Republican Study Committee, and we actually have also introduced a bill that actually brings transparency and real reform to the voting process. And it's going to take everybody, all hands on deck, from the local parties, the state parties, the voters. I mean, we are going to have to be very diligent and protect our nation through the voting process. And I know that is something that we talk about quite often here. It is so important, and my fear is that people will become fatigued with it and feel like their vote doesn't matter. But I promise the votes do matter. They matter to every single one of us. And as we move into this 117th and beyond and get ready for the 22 and certainly the 24 election cycle, we have got to stay engaged as patriots, as people. Forget the party. We've got to stay involved and get to the polls. First off, there's a lot of men and women that gave the ultimate sacrifice so we could live in the greatest country in the world and have access to these freedoms. And as corrupt and as crazy as everything has seen, and some of the news that has been released after the elections with, some of the voter fraud. I mean, I believe there was voter fraud in different parts of the state and the country, no doubt about it. But we've got to be diligent. And I wish I could tell you something right now that would make it just make sense and tell you there's not going to be any problems. But it's going to take every single one of us. I know we care about this nation. I know we all care about the future of this country, regardless of who's in office, regardless of who's the president. We've got to protect our nation, and this is such a gift and such a special opportunity. It's not going to be easy, but I think we continue talking about it. I think we will still see people want to volunteer and be engaged in the poll watching and so forth. And clearly, the bill that the Republican Study Committee introduced is a good bill with transparency to it, but it is also a conversation that happens all the time up here, because that is one of the things that it is concerning. And it's concerning seeing all these people coming across the border. What is the real reason for that? Is it to register voters or not register there, or allow them to vote in the next election cycles because they're here? We're in crisis mode in a lot of different places in our nation right now. And I wish I could tell you that it's all going to get worked out and be good, but it's just not there. We're not there yet, but we can't give up on what our nation stands for and the freedoms that we love and appreciate every single day, because without this opportunity, without this ability to vote, we lose even more of our rights. And I think it's just paramount that we dig deep and stay engaged in the process.
Thank you. Before we go to our next question, just a couple of reminders. You can find the Congresswoman on Facebook at facebook.com/Rep Herrell, and follow her on Twitter at Rep Herrell as well. And if we aren't able to get to your question in our time remaining, please go to the website herrell.house.gov send the Congresswoman an email and get back to you as quickly as we can. Our next question is going to be about reopening the state from Claire. Claire, your line is live.
Hello, Yvette. How are you doing? I hope everything's well up in Washington.
It is. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen you. My question is, I used to work with the casino industry, so I know that every nonprofit, every VFW, every club that had some form of gaming and gambling revenues coming to the state has been decimated. And I know that the state has lost probably upwards of $160 million just in gross receipts tax that the state would have had the governor not shut down the 5 racetrack or race casinos. And I'm wondering, what can you do to start pushing this governor? I mean, we've got almost a herd immunity. We have 3 vaccines. We have half the states have been vaccinated. People are wearing masks everywhere. Everybody's aware of what this virus was. What can you do to try possibly pushing this governor to start reopening our state and stop decimating our economy? Is there anything you can do on the federal side?
Well, on the federal side, not so much. I mean, they passed another COVID relief bill, which in it had the checks, for the stimulus checks for people, if you will. But you know what? It's time that we really take the bull by the horns, and we've all got to start pushing on this governor to open our state. I mean, it sickens me to think how many children that we lost through the school system the schools being closed for the last year, hundreds. I've talked to a number of superintendents around the state, and I'm worried about the children, the kids, the students that have kind of fallen through the cracks. But this is why it's so imperative that we open our state and close our border, because every single person on this call I know has been affected by COVID, whether it was the loss of a loved one, loss of a job, closed a business, saw a loved one in the hospital alone or in a convalescent home, a senior living home alone. We've all been affected by it. We've all wore the mask. We've been in lockdown for a year. And now to turn the blind eye on all the things that we've just gone through as a state, it just does not make sense to me. So it's time that all of us, and believe me, we push on the governor to open up our economy, because one size does not fit all. New Mexicans are smart. What's working in Albuquerque doesn't necessarily work in Jowl or Hatch or Alamogordo even. And it's time that we just start looking at the real picture and stop letting this government chip away at our rights. But we've got to do it collectively. And I know our law enforcement, the heroes in terms of our sheriffs around some of these rural communities, have been very willing to stand up with our business owners and with our schools and with our students and so forth. And so we continue to push, because it's sad to watch New Mexico, such an amazing state with such diverse industries, be one of the top 11, top 10 in the country with the highest unemployment rate, when you can go down Main Street, any town in New Mexico, and see there are help wanted signs everywhere. We've got to get people back to work and get these businesses where they can start making a profit. And you're right, closing down some of these operations that brought in not only jobs and dollars for the communities, but tourism money. And I think we're all growing very weary of this. I think we're going to see a shift, that it'll be moved off from COVID and they'll start talking more about something else, like maybe climate or something. But we've got to get our country back. We've got to get our state back, and we've got to start pushing on our government, our governor, to open our state back and let our free markets work for us.
Thank you. Just one more reminder: if you want to leave your email address for the Congresswoman for newsletters and email updates, please press *6. Our next question is about the IRS from Bud. Bud, your line is live.
Well, thank you. I want to thank you for your help out of your Las Cruces office with my income tax. It only took them 4 years, and my question is, they're supposed to work for us. Why don't they answer our letters? Why don't they answer our phone calls? It took 4 years in your office to get an answer, and the answer was the IRS finally admitted they screwed up.
That's great. So I'm glad we were all able to help so quick. Here's the thing. There's just too much government. I mean, we have got to have a limited government that's less intrusive. And part of the problem is these taxes they're high. It's hard to file. It makes it complex for everybody. And for government that has so many people on the payroll, you would think that customer service would be right up there at the top of their list, but it's not. And it's sad and it's unfortunate, and I'm thankful we could help you, but it's unfortunate that you have to go to a member of Congress or somebody else to get them to respond to you. And I'm very worried about this new policy coming down the pike on the federal level, the infrastructure bill. I want people to be very aware of what's in that bill. Of the almost $2 trillion, there's less than 6% of it that will actually be used for real infrastructure. And I'm telling you this so that you understand the way this $2 trillion gets paid for is a raise in taxes. I think we ought to be cutting taxes. We need to let New Mexicans and Americans, hardworking folks, keep more money in their pockets. But it worries me to see them talk about raising taxes on small businesses up to 33%. The death tax will be coming back. I mean, it is incredible the amount of tax that's going to be coming down the pike with that transportation bill. So I want people to understand very clearly how that's going to get paid for. But listen, we've got to get a handle on this overspending in government. We need to get rid of the abuse and just the gluttony, if you will, when it comes to spending on the federal level. But we need to lower these taxes. We need to keep these tax breaks in play so that our small businesses and our individuals, our workers, can keep more money in their pocket, and they'll be able to infuse it back into our economy, our local economies. But just be aware that there is tax increases on the horizon, and we will be fighting them tooth and nail, because I think we are overtaxed as it is. And we need to keep more money in the American pocketbook and in the American business owner's business.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll go to a comment from the Ezel household. Your line is live.
Ezel. Good evening, Yvette. Thank you for putting on this call. My question is, right now in the state of New Mexico, we have more people on unemployment than we have working in our state, and that's given me great heartburn. The reason that we're having this problem right now is because of the federal money that is coming in where it's being given away, therefore encouraging people not to go back to work. What's your stance on this, and what are you going to do to be able to help us get good paying jobs back that people do want to go to work?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's part of the problem. As long as we keep giving this stimulus money out through these COVID relief bills, people are not going to want to get back to work. And like we said earlier, I said it earlier, you can go anywhere in the state of New Mexico, anywhere in the country. There is a need to get people back out to work. I voted against the bill because I didn't think that there was enough in it for what we really intended, and too much pork. I mean, again, that last COVID relief bill had less than 10% that actually went to COVID relief. There was more money in the bill for Nancy Pelosi's House district than there was for actual COVID relief, and that's a problem. And until we stop doing that, I fight against it all the time, because I don't think that we need to be paying people to stay at home when we have good, able-bodied people ready, willing in some cases to go to work, but not if they think they can make more sitting on the couch instead of going down the street and getting a job. And we've seen that minimum wages have been increased. And Candy, it's just going back to that too much government. We're incentivizing people to come here illegally because they'll get money, they'll get health care, they'll get education. Now we're incentivizing people to stay at home. And here's the biggest problem. Not one bill, not one time in this Congress since I've been here has there been a discussion about balancing our federal budget. And I actually told somebody the other day, I said, I think the reason they put that fence around the Capitol complex is they've got a money tree in there somewhere, because we are not even being fiscally responsible in how we are spending money. And just so you know, and I don't know, you probably already saw this, but in that last COVID bill, the matrix was changed. And so what ended up happening is the states that had the higher unemployment rates received more money instead of incentivizing states that were opening up, opening their businesses, getting things going, getting their economy growing again. We actually rewarded states, and they were all blue, that weren't doing a good job of opening up the state. And we've got to change that mindset because we just have too many good small businesses that are the backbone of our economy, not only in the state, but in the country, that need these workers. And what we're doing and what we're seeing happen right now is we're just exacerbating this because now we've got more and more illegals coming in, and we're going to push out the low wage earner and the middle class and lower wage earners. They're going to be hit the most because these jobs eventually will get filled not by Americans. And that's another critical issue that we had discussions today about that in a meeting with the Border Caucus. And so just know I'm fighting against these tax increases. I'm fighting against this incentivizing people to stay at home. I'm fighting against incentivizing people to come to our country illegally. And we need to limit the size and scope of our government.
All right, and that's all the time we have for questions this evening. We'll turn it back over to the Congresswoman for a few closing remarks. Thank you all for joining.
Yeah, thank you, Jordan. And you know what, everybody, thank you so much for being on this call. And I hope, again, we do this more and more because this is how it works. It's just keeping in contact, communicating with people throughout the district and being able to answer the questions. And if I don't have the answer, we'll certainly find one for you. But you really need to hear what's happening on the federal level. Over the last 100 days, I've been so dismayed to see more bills coming out that have to do with equality, racial justice, climate justice, things that are not helping to build our economy, that are not opening the doors for free markets and for capitalism, and to see a real thriving economy. And we should be heading in that direction right now. There's no reason why we aren't, because again, we're seeing many states starting to open up again. New Mexico, not one of them, unfortunately, but it's incredible to see that we're talking about things that are not putting money in our pockets and not helping our small business owners or our American workers. And those are the things that I'm working very hard on, and many of my colleagues. The divisiveness here is something that I think stagnates and stalemates the ability to get things done. But I do believe that as we continue to move through this legislative session, that we'll have more conversations. We know that a lot of these things are polling very high in terms of not working. People are not happy. They're not satisfied. And I think we'll start to see maybe some easing, if you will, on some of the things that are coming out of Washington, D.C. right now. Some of these executive orders have been so detrimental. A lot of pushback. But don't stop using your voice. Don't stop talking about the things that are happening on the federal level and even the state level. Candy could probably have her own town hall right now and answer and field just as many questions as I did, because it's just sad that we're in a place watching, in some way, our government dismantle the country that is so important. And I want our future generations to have as many or more opportunities than we all had. And I don't have all the answers. I know that God does. And I think right now we stay strong and faithful. We know what's right. We've got to stand strong on truth. And again, this is the hardest job I've done in my life, but yet the very best job. And I am so grateful to be here. And it is truly my greatest honor. And I just want to thank all of you for making time to listen to us tonight and talk about what's going on. And I know we'll do this again. And please reach out to us with any questions that we may not have been able to answer, or anything you want to talk to any of our staff or myself about offline. And I just want to thank you for believing not only in me, but in the greatest country in the world. And we'll just continue to plug along and move the America First agenda down the road and keep doing good things for New Mexico and the nation. So with that, I really appreciate all of you being on this call tonight. Thank you very, very much.